Hello, everyone. Welcome to Remnant Mentality Ministries. My name is Marie Rogers, and again, I thank God for another opportunity to be before you today, and also thank you for your time and listening to this message. Listen, we are on all social media platforms. That's Remnant Mentality Ministries. We can be found on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you like what you hear today or like any other messages under the Remnant Mentality Ministries, whether it's something that benefited you or something that you feel like someone else can benefit from, we ask that you like, comment, and share. Definitely go on to YouTube and subscribe. It does not cost you anything, not money anyways. Just a few minutes of your time to just log in and subscribe and put your email in. So today I want to talk about judging. And I tell you, I have to admit to you that this came about because of something that happened over the weekend. I was the offender. And that's what really made me start to think about this. So over the weekend, I had a good friend. They gave me a call, and they had some things over the past year or so that we've been talking about that had been bothering, some issues that they weren't able to deal with. And they finally started to come to grips and decided, hey, it's time for them to get their life going and trying to close the gap on some of these other issues that they had. And so I listened, and they went through and they told me what was on their mind and what they had planned and the goals they had set for themselves. And immediately after they finished, I kind of chimed in and with the, well, what if, or did you think, or I don't know, or I wouldn't. I started doing all that. And it, right after I finished, it became kind of awkward because it was silent. And what I thought was probably a couple of minutes, it was probably just a couple seconds. But I knew then that there was something wrong, especially when my friend said, all right, I'll think about it. And that was the end of the conversation. And it wasn't until sometime later, after I hung up, or after we hung up, I started to think like, that didn't go quite the way I thought it would be. And part of it was because they never asked for my opinion. They never asked for my suggestions or my advice. They were merely telling me what their plan was. And it's not something that was new. I knew some of the things that they had been going through. And yet I kind of interjected and gave my opinion on what I thought was right or wrong with their plan. And later, so I called them. I did apologize. We talked about it for a little bit, and that was in that conversation. But that evening, as I asked for forgiveness, and as I'm talking to God, a light bulb came on, and it made me think. Just as I was going to God to ask for forgiveness and help Him guard my tongue, what if this person had gone to God? What if they hadn't asked anybody else about their plan or what they should do? They went to God and said, God, I need you to help me with this. You're the only person I know. I don't want to go to anyone else. And maybe that was the direction and the guidance that God gave them. And they went with it, and they were just sharing that information with me. And instead, here I am immediately trying to trump what God's told them to do. And we need to be careful about that, right? Because what we don't want to do is sometimes people come to us, and whether it's for advice or whether it's to get, or whether it's just to tell us something, sometimes people are on that edge, right? And so what we want to make sure is we don't get them to the point where we say the wrong thing and it takes them totally over, or we say something and it gets them to revert back. And it could be whether it's personal, whether it's work related, your family, your kids. What if it's God, the church, Jesus, the Bible, any of those things? What we want to be careful of, for me, what I want to be careful of, I don't want to have someone come to me in one of those instances. I give them my advice. I totally forget what they say, just kind of erase what they were thinking. And then in their minds, they're like, yep, see, that's what I thought. Everybody go to church. They think their idea is better. They're not even listening to me. We should be receptive, and we should be open to hearing what other people have to say, and understand that not everything is meant for us to comment on. So we want to kind of guard our tongue. Now, so today I'm going to come out of Romans chapter 14, verse 13. And I'm going to read it in a minute. But that was kind of the gist of what I wanted to talk about as far as what got me up to the message that I want to talk to today about not judging and how God is the only judge and a juror. This is what Romans 14 and 13 says. And I had to read this from my enhanced Bible. The letters were a little bit bigger, so don't judge me. Look, Romans 14:13 says, let us not therefore judge one another, but judge this rather than no man put a stumbling block on occasion to fall in his brother's way. Now, that's kind of what I just said, right? What we don't want to do is we have someone that may be on the right path. They may be doing exactly what they heard God tell them to do. And here we go. They come to us, whether they're asking or whether they're or whether they are just telling us. and we put something right there, we make them stumble over and make them start thinking. What I hope doesn't happen is that in this particular case, it may not have been a big deal, but what we don't want to do is have someone second guess God. If that's what they heard from God and they still went to somebody else and you tell them something total opposite, what if they go to God and say, oh, God, you know what? Maybe I need to think about this. You sure you told me this? Because I didn't ask these questions. This is what my friend told me. We don't want to do that. We want people to know that God is the answer. He has the answer. And if he's giving it to you, then that's the plan that he wants you to take to get you on that road. Not from Marie, right? Now, here's a quick story, very quick, less than a minute. And this kind of goes into another scripture. And this won't be a very long lesson. But so there's a story, you may have heard it or you may have read it somewhere. And it's about a blind man. And this blind man lives in a small town. And he carries a light lamp with him in case he goes out in the evening, and so one night he leaves out, goes out for the evening, has his light lamp in hand. And as he's out in the town, doesn't say where exactly he's at, but there's a group of people that see him. And they finally realize that he's blind. And they see him carrying this lamp, this light lamp, and they start to make fun of him. Right. And I'm sure some of us have been in that situation, whether we were the offender or whether we've just seen it happen or if it's happened to us. Right. So they start making fun of him. And if one of them finally, out of curiosity, decides to ask him, hey, sir, let me ask you a question. You're blind. I can see that you can't see anything. Why do you have that light lamp with you? So the blind man replies and he says, you're right. I am blind. I can't see anything, but the lamp is not for me. The lamp is for people like you who can see. So if I'm out here in the evening when it's dark and I'm crossing the street, you may not be able to see me and I may get hit. And immediately they kind of gasped and they knew that they went wrong for even making fun of him. And that's what we have to understand. Some things that happen, we just because we don't see it, because it's not our plan, we didn't offer that suggestion, we may not understand it. We shouldn't judge why someone is doing something. We don't know where they got it from. Just like God has a purpose for us, there's an understanding. When people leave the house or when people make a decision, some of them have actually thought through that process of what they're going to do, where they're going to go. It's not for us to determine, oh, I wouldn't have worn that. I wouldn't have my kids do that. I wouldn't send my kids to this school. I wouldn't live here. I wouldn't read it that way. I wouldn't sing the song that way. It's not for us. It's not for us, because what God put in us, that's what is going to be let out of us. So we don't need to judge. Right? It's not, we don't have to understand anything. But what Paul was saying, even in Romans, right, is we don't all have to agree on everything. But let's do one another the favor of showing some type of respect. Right? Because we're not all going to understand why somebody did something. And just because they don't do it our way doesn't mean that our way is right. Our way may be right for us. That may be the path that God directed us on. We both may have the same question for God. He may give us different answers based off of where he wants us and based off of where we're at in our life. This is what James 4, chapter verses 11 and 12 says, and this is going to be out of the NLT. And I apologize, Romans 4 and 13, that was out of King James 14:13. So this is a warning against judging others. Don't speak evil against each other, dear brothers and sisters. If you criticize and judge each other, then you are criticizing and judging God's law. But your job is to obey the law, not to judge whether it applies to you. God alone, who gave the law, as a judge. He has the power to save or to destroy. So what right do we have to judge your neighbor? He's exactly right. Look, God is a judge and a juror in this whole thing, not us. It doesn't matter that we may be some supervisor at a big time job, someone in the military, someone high up there, block party leader, whatever it is. But we are not the judge and juror. We can give advice if we're asked. But the old adage sometimes applies, right? Sometimes it says if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Simple. And in the case that I had Saturday, and the case with the group of men and the blind man, that's what we should have done. We should have, you know what? I don't have anything nice to say. I'm just going to let it be and I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Because a lot of times what we find out, at least what I found out in the past, and when I was married, I did this a lot, right? Like I would spew off certain things. Some of them didn't really make sense. Some of them I didn't really think about. And I'm sure a lot of people can attest to that. But I thought about it over a period of time, and I went back and I would tell my ex-husband, I'd be like, you know what? You were right. Or I'd go back, if it was someone I work with, and say, you know what, your suggestion is probably a little bit better. But sometimes you got to let that person kind of feel it him or herself, right? They have to go through the motions. But it's not for us to take what they say and automatically start to chop it down. Again, the main thing for me, I would say, is what we don't want to do is don't want to have somebody revert all the way back to zero. Someone that was on that cusp of taking that next step, and because of something we said, we chopped down their idea. We basically took what they were saying. It didn't make any sense. And now we say, you know what? Yeah, I'm done with that. I'll wait. And then they put it off and they put it off and put it off. So we want to just be careful. So this was a short message, but I hope you got something out of it. It was very enlightening for me, like I said, when it happened Saturday, because even though I don't do it, or I try not to do it as often, and sometimes we do it and we're not thinking, it's not intentionally. I'm not suggesting anybody does these things intentionally, but I just want us to think about it as we go about our business day to day, as we leave the house, whether we do it, whether we hear someone else do it, just be mindful of what we're doing. Be mindful that we see someone else doing something and it's not for us to judge. It's okay. It may work out for them. That may be the guidance and the direction that God gave them. It's not for us. We can ask the question, but to sit and judge without even asking and trying to understand is just wrong. And it's in the scripture. It tells us that that's not something that Marie made up. That's not something that you're going to hear just someone else saying. It's in the scripture. It's wrong. God doesn't judge us. If he did, I'll tell you, for me, it wouldn't be pretty. And I'm sure some of you, if you go down and look at some of the things that you've said or done, you say the same thing. So again, my name is Marie Rogers. I'm with Remnant Mentality Ministries. I hope that you got something out of it. I do ask that once again, if you go onto YouTube and subscribe, again, it doesn't cost you anything, just a few minutes of your time. Until next time, have a beautiful, blessed day. Once again, thank you for your time. God bless.